to Maxed Out Man, helping you become the man you were made to be.
Hey guys, it's Kevin Davis from the Maxed Out Man podcast. This is episode number 42. I'm here with Dr. Abby Medcalf, not Metcalf, right? So it's M-E-M-E-D. Dr. Abby is a relationship maven, which I think is a cool way to say that. Psychologist, author, podcast host, and TEDx speaker who has helped thousands of people think differently so they can create connection, ease, and joy in their relationships, especially the one with yourself. She's got over 35 years of experience and is a recognized authority and highly sought after. And some really cool credits. She's the author of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, Be Happily Married Even If Your Partner Won't Do a Thing, and the host of top-rated Relationships Made Easy podcast, now in over 170 countries, almost 250 episodes released, as I saw, which is awesome. This is episode 42 of this one. I've got another one kind of in the 30s, so I feel like I'm starting to get used to it, but 250 is a lot. So, hey, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I listened to one of your podcasts this morning, and I want to kind of get into that also. Mm-hmm. But so that was kind of your official media bio. But give me a little bit more about what you do. And this is obviously a podcast made mainly for men, but I always say men and the women that love them, right? Like that's kind of my because I'm guessing we get some women on this podcast going, I'm going to listen to that one because I need to fix that in my man, kind of a thing. So.
Oh my gosh. Men and women who are driven crazy by them. Yes.
Yes. I've been married for 28 years, so my wife definitely qualifies as that for sure.
Yes. Yeah. It, and most of my clients are men. And I, for many years worked in, mergers and acquisitions with executives who had drug and alcohol problems. So I've been in a very male dominated world for, I was for a long time, and I still am. I think men are generally attracted to the way I do therapy or coaching or whatever you want to call it, because I'm very action oriented. And it's very, brief solution-based kind of therapy that I think men are really attracted to. So I think that's why I attract a lot of men into the practice. So I'm ready to talk to all the men out there. I've got all of your fabulous answers. And I really have. I wrote the book, Be Happily Married Even If Your Partner Won't Do a Thing, because I was working with executives. I was doing coaching, but I didn't know the difference between coaching and counseling. Right. Frankly, I just was said I did and I didn't. And so, as I'm working with them and they're improving their lives, at work, that of course you're the person you are everywhere, so and then they started coming to talk to me saying, I'm getting along better with my wife and my relationship with my kids is really improved and my mom and they're giving me this stuff. And I've never met these wives. I've never met these people. But when you change what you're doing, it absolutely 100%, it makes sense, changes the people around you. They have no choice. As your boundaries shift, as you're coming across differently, as you have different energy that you're bringing in. And I can talk about why relationships fail and what you're doing wrong, or we can talk about just what to do right. I'm down for whatever.
We'll talk about it all. We've got plenty of time.
But that's really where the book came from, was working with men who were improving their relationships with their significant others without me ever meeting them, just from the work I was doing with them. So, and I'm a person in long-term recovery from heroin. So, I came into the field kind of from that angle. So I have a big specialty in drug and alcohol. Obviously, it's what I was doing. And I still do. I still work at drug rehabs. I've always had my hand in that. And then I mostly just do private practice coaching and the podcast and writing books. I have a new book on boundaries coming out in November. So maybe I'll be back next year. We'll talk about boundaries.
Yeah.
But because they're the answer to everything. So there's that's kind of my world. I do speaking, all the things. And then deal with my man and my kids and, all my people. So,
I mean, I just listening to I was able to get, and I listened to your latest podcast that you released, number 247 on patience, which, that was the first one that popped up on Spotify. So I did my cardio this morning while I listened to you, and just listening to your style and kind of the no BS approach to how you speak about things. And you talked about how you yell at people on the podcast, or that kind of. I can see the appeal to men with that approach, right? Like that's because so often I think when men think about counseling, they're like, oh, let's sit on the couch and just explore all our feelings and, all of that stuff. Come back to me for the next 17 years and maybe we'll get somewhere.
Yeah.
So I always
what I like. Yeah.
I joked with my kids growing up, because I said, if I ever started, because I'm to the other extreme of that, which I always said, if I open a counseling center, it would be stop being a little bitch counseling. Guaranteed to solve your problems in one short visit. Right?
Smack people around. Yeah. I am like quintessential bossy Jewish mother. You know what I mean? And I was like, I know what you should be doing. I'm very controlling and I want you to do it. And that's, a lot of my podcast is like, here's the research. Here's what's been working with all my clients for all these years and things I've applied in my own life that work. And like, it's a no-brainer. You can't miss if you're mixing the, great research with really what real life work I still do with clients. I still have clients. So I'm really bringing so much just on the ground experience in all these different settings, in businesses and private practice and rehab, and so I can tell you it works. That's why I start yelling. I'm like, just do it. Shut up and do it. Stop complaining. Yeah. But yeah, I'm a no. If people act like a victim, I have zero tolerance or patience for it. Zero. I always say life is happening for you, not to you. So, when you shift the perspective, everything changes. And I'll give you a really quick thing I have right now. Verb, which is don't act like a victim. Don't act entitled. Don't think you can read anyone's mind or that they can read yours. I know what she's going to say, so I'm not going to say it. That kind of BS. Or blame. And when you're in that, any of those, one or all of them or a combination, there is no conversation. There is no communication because there can't be. Or if you're talking to someone and they're doing it with you, if they're blaming you for their lot in life and, I can't change because my partner won't change. That's what I always heard. Again, until I started having all this, I believed it, I think, until I started having all this success without it and realizing that wasn't true. So, if you're into that, if you're in the verb thing, you gotta shift out of it.
I'm interested because we talk a lot about on the podcast with different guests about kind of generational things that we're seeing now. You're a little bit older than me. I'm 50. Happy birthday. I don't know when you recorded that podcast, but it was on your birthday. Yep. I'm interested to know, like, are you seeing, because one of the biggest way for me to want to beat my children, and my children are 25 and 23, by the way, so they can stick up for themselves. But I'm not like beating my toddler. It is a sense of entitlement, which is something I've struggled with my youngest being the baby and kind of always wanting to be taken care of and all that kind of stuff. So anybody in my life that shows me a sense of entitlement, like it is very, very difficult for me not to want to kind of, dismiss them, for lack of a better term. Are you working with people across the age range, and kind of what are you seeing with that?
Yeah, I do. I have a lot. Yeah. I don't have really, usually when people are in their early 20s, that's not true. I have a couple clients in my early 20s. Never mind. I guess I do. I try to refer out though to somebody if I don't think I'm the good fit. I do try to refer out, but not try. I do refer out. But I think that entitlement shifts a lot. I grew up in a home where that just, immigrant parents, that just wasn't a thing. It just wasn't a thing. My children have zero of it. They're like, it was, because for me, it was probably the top of my list of things that couldn't happen. Yeah. So that's something that, work in growth mindset versus fixed. Maybe you've talked about that before, know about it. I was just very into the effort and what you do and doing for other people, and that we are very privileged, and you need to understand that. So it means you have to give even more. And so my kids really don't have that. My daughter, she was getting a car. She wanted a car. She's 17, my daughter. She really wanted a car. And we said, you have to pay half. You have to pay half. And yeah, I could buy her a brand new car. No, I'm not. And so she has a 2012 Honda Accord that she bought,
Nice.
paid half of, with 100,000 miles on it. And that's her first car. And I think that's great. So I think that it really depends. I think people make blanket statements that all millennials are entitled or,
right.
Whatever. And I think that's crap. I think that, yes, there was some shift with Gen Y or millennials where these, the parents, the boomer and some Gen X parents were really just trying to give their kids what they didn't have. And maybe went too far, certainly, and there's definitely, I see things today that I'm just shocked when I see someone like talking back to their parents or I had this the other day. I heard this conversation where the mom was saying, oh yeah, to a friend, we're going to buy a new car. And she's talking about the car. And the kid says, we need to get a black one. I want a black one. This kid was like, maybe, I don't know, 8, 7, saying to the back, can you imagine? And she's like, she's first of all interrupting her while she's talking, just right in there. She's not saying anything. She's not stopping the kid. She's not saying, stop, this isn't appropriate. I'm talking. And she's literally like, well, we'll see. We'll see. Oh my God. So, for some 8-year-old to think they have that much power in their home that they get to choose it's so bad for kids to have power like that. They don't know they don't have frontal lobes not connected. They don't have the brain power for this. It shouldn't happen. So I think it's a lot of mistakes in parenting. And so this kid though, that I'm talking, would be a Gen Z, whereas in general, we know that Gen Z actually are in general from the research are working harder and will start in a mailroom. Understand the idea of like, oh, I can start here and work my way up. Whereas, I help executives sometimes hire their assistants. Oh, and I had a guy, this is a couple of years ago now, but he hires this assistant and she comes in the next day. She's very millennial. She comes in the next day with a list of things he could improve. Like it's her 3rd day on the job, I think, with a list of things that he could improve, and this is a guy running a multi-billion-dollar international company, right? And he's ready to just fire her out of hand.
Yeah.
And I had to stop and say to him, she researched the hell out of your company. I said, is anything on that list true? Like, is there anything there that you could take something from? I said, when you stop taking feedback from anybody, what do you really, is that your ego? Like, what does that mean? I said, yes, you can have a conversation with her about, this is a time where it's about you learning and actually not making judgments yet, because you really don't know. You haven't been in here yet, but I would love to hear your suggestions in 6 months. You can temper it. You can help this person understand what's appropriate and what's not. So yeah, I don't think that I know people like to say it, but it's not my experience, my actual experience. It's sure I've got cases like that where you're just face palming going, are you kidding me? And then but then I have other people who, really aren't doing that. So I know a lot of boomers who are very entitled. So I don't know what to, I say with love because I'm one. I'm a boomer, Gen X boomery. I'm right on that cusp because I'm almost 60. So I'm like right on the
edge.
Right on the edge. But yeah, so I would say there's no blankets.
I mean, and I can imagine that this is a blanket statement, but that generation in particular with that approach is there is a sense of entitlement that she comes to this man who is clearly successful with a kind of it's that sense of entitlement, which almost always comes coupled with a sense of disrespect, whether it's intentional or not intentional. Yeah. So that's hilarious because I could totally see that happening.
No, he was like beyond. It's clueless is what it is. It's parents who don't necessarily raise their kids with a great understanding of other people and your place in it and, what that all is, but I'm a native New Yorker, but I live here in the Bay Area of California, which is very different than where I grew up.
Welcome to a different planet, right?
I always joke that when I moved to the Middle East and it was less of a culture shock than when I moved here from New York. It's very, because you're expecting, the same, it's very different. And needless to say, dressed like I'm always walking around in my stilettos, and my New York fast walk. But here in California, it was put into law, this self-esteem ideas with no research behind it. No, I mean, so crazy. Where that's when they took away red pencils here in California. Like you couldn't use, the money from the government, from the state government to buy a red pencil because it hurt kids' feelings. And, everybody gets a trophy and we don't keep score and, just the stuff that makes me want to throw up in my mouth a little bit. And that I have, because I grew up with the lawn darts and brothers holding me down and beating. I was tied to a tree once, when they were babysitting,
We had BB gun wars growing up. We had bottle rocket wars, lawn darts. I love lawn darts. That is the greatest invention.
I remember a kid breaking his arm, getting the lawn dart, hitting him, and it broke his arm. And, everybody kept playing with them. Wasn't like the parents came and took him away. Getting told that, 8 a.m. on a Saturday, I don't want to see you in the house till 5. I mean, I know where my kids are every friggin' second. Like, I know where they are, right? There's just such a different, it's really, we're not in Kansas anymore. I don't know what to say, but it's.
Yeah, the parenting thing is an interesting, we watch a lot of those Caribbean Life HGTV shows.
Uh-huh.
And I'm always taken aback when these people are buying an $800,000 vacation home for their home. Mm-hmm. And they bring the kids in, and the producers are bringing their kids in to ask these kids questions about what they want in this home. And I'm like, it's none of your damn business. This is my house. Maybe I'll let you come down with me and not leave you at a babysitter whenever I come down to, the Cayman Islands.
Yep. It is. It's just too much attention on kids and their need. I wish we could shift. I think the emotional needs are important. That needs to be different. Mm-hmm. I should say that was a good change, but the problem was it was like throwing the baby out with the bathwater in a lot of cases. And it was like only that. And really the big problem I see is that we've stopped having obstacles in kids' way. That parents have I don't know when that became popular, but, let's take away every single obstacle that kids have. And the only way from the research to raise self-esteem, I know we're going off on parenting, but I'm going to say it.
There's a lot of parents. Honestly, there's a lot of dads that listen to this, right? So
the only way to raise self-esteem, the only way that's been proven from the research is mastery. That's it. So meaning that something is a little hard and you get through it and get to the other side. That's how you raise your self-esteem. Not with not getting a red pencil mark on your paper, not with getting a trophy when you didn't do the work, not with, that's not how. It's by persevering. It's with grit. Now, in my day, it was a little too much grit, right? Just shake it off, was the, right? You're fine.
Rub some dirt in it, get over it.
That was a little much, right? But now, but we, again, went too far. So I think the biggest thing you can do is delay gratification for your kids. I used to do things when they were little, like I'd be in the kitchen and, mommy can have a glass of water. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm here. I'm standing here. I'm like, sure, in a minute. Mm-hmm. I had nothing else to do, but I would not bring it to them immediately. Do you know what I mean? Just little tiny things you can do to delay gratification. My daughter in this car. Yeah, you want to work? She's been working. She turned 15, man. She got a job before she was 15. Like she was waiting. She was ready. She started lifeguarding. She's like, I want to work because I want a car. And I was like, and I was like, sure. If you come up with half, your dad and I'll come up with the other half. Knowing she wasn't going to come up with, I was hoping $30,000. I was like, I'm not spending that, but it really, and we had her, she's paying for her insurance. She's paying, not her insurance, sorry, her, part of the insurance. She's paying for part of the insurance, she paid to register it. Like these are things I think are really good. And now she's learning, how do you register a car? What is registration? She's learning all these tools, right? And it's great. And she has something to friggin' look forward to later. Like getting a better car, getting her, completely buying it on her own. Like she has those other things. And I'm not saying I'm a perfect parent, don't get me wrong, but there's just ways that you really, if you can put obstacles in front of your kids, good ones, healthy ones, or at the very least, there are plenty of obstacles, don't take them away. It's hard to watch your kids suffer. I know that, but they're not really suffering, but and obviously if it was bullying or something at school, I wouldn't ignore it. But, in the day to day of your kids' lives, if my kids forgot something at soccer or we didn't play soccer. I'm from New York. We play baseball, but it's all soccer out here. I don't like it. But if they forgot their cleats, they forgot their cleats.
You get to play. Now you get to play in your sock feet.
You get to play just like I did. I remember taking off my shoes and playing barefoot. Like that's what's going to happen. And so, guess what? You're going to remember them next time. I didn't run home to get it's crazy. It's like I'm working. Yeah. What are you talking about? So, and even if I wasn't, I'm not running to get you think like you need some responsibility. You have to have some skin in the game. That's what's going to help. And my kids are really responsible. So,
that's awesome.
You got to just make your choices. My kids are also not going to Harvard. Like I didn't make those choices for them. I wanted a more relaxed kind of environment for them. And so, but they're healthy and happy and thriving and great kids. And I can have conversations with, and I really like them, which I have not gone through any terrible teen years. I mean, or even ever, really. I really haven't. And so it's just, I was old too, having kids. I think that helped. Mm-hmm. You're a little more mellow. It's like, whatever. Yeah. And you have your money in play. There's a lot of things that feel good, so it's not, that's not the problem.
Yeah,
sorry, I went off on a little tangent about parents.
That's great. I love it. Both of my girls did go through about 14. They kind of went to the Linda Blair exorcist head spinning around kind of thing. They're older now, so that adult relationship's a little bit easier. But we deal with a lot of, and side note, we actually did the half and half thing with both of our girls. Also, they started saving when they were like 8 and 9 years old.
Oh my God.
Like they would put a little bit aside, which actually if you're listening and you have younger kids, this is a great thing to do. And it also makes it less financially taxing because if they save $1 that week, then you put $1 in there, that kind of thing. So so if you did that too, that way you're not like, oh crap, they've got their 15 grand. Now I got to come up with 15 grand for the rest of this car. But and they value that so much more if they're bought into the insurance thing, then they know what happens. Like, hey, look, our insurance was $200 a month or whatever. And now you had this ticket and now it's $400 a month. Well, guess who's responsible for that extra $200? It's not me.
Nope. Honestly, that is great. I mean, it really is. And that's what we're trying to do when we raise our kids is create not just responsible humans, but thoughtful humans, kind humans, generous humans, who know where they are in the world and not, entitled brats, right? Like that's what we're doing, but it starts young. And by the way, it's never too late to shift. So I'm sure some people listening are like, oh my God, it's already bad. Or the thing I hear a lot is like, oh, but my wife is more lenient and I'm the tough one, that's a whole other story, but you just need to do what you can do and don't lean too far into tough territory because you're trying to compensate for the not tough. You know what I mean?
Right.
Don't do that. Because
don't if one spouse or one parent's on one side of the continuum, it doesn't necessitate you being on the complete opposite. For us, I tend to be, more hard, like I was a little bit tougher. And it's funny because I said that don't be a little bitch thing before, but our girls, even now, they will call Michelle, my wife, for more, emotional support. Not that I can't give it, and I do, but more of the soft side. But when they are having a struggle that they just need to put their big girl panties on and just do it, they literally call me or text me and say, Dad, I need the stop being a little bitch talk. And so like, and it's not, there's no cruelness or anything, but it's like, hey, here's, what's the problem? What can we do to solve it? And then, just sometimes you just need to just do it. We don't really need to talk about your feelings around the fact that you've spent the last 4 days watching Netflix instead of doing, your Kim homework or whatever. Yeah. Just turn the stupid computer off and go do what you're supposed to do, kind of a thing. We deal with a lot of young parents now in marriage ministry or marriage mentoring and ministry. And it does seem like I'm a little nervous because with this new generation of parents, there is a lot more like, I want to know if this kid can't have a cookie, I want to sit and talk about his feelings about why he can't. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you just can't have it. That sometimes it's not good for you.
Because I said so. I
Yeah.
mean, I hate, it really is. I think what people miss is that children are not tiny adults.
Yeah.
And what people confuse a lot is maturity and sophistication. And they are two very different things. The brain isn't fully matured until about age 26 to 28. End of. I don't care how smart your kid is. I don't care how brilliant your child is. I don't care what. The brain is developing, and very rapidly all these years. Your frontal lobe, where your prefrontal cortex is, where your judgment, your long-term planning, your rational brain, all that is developed last. That's the last thing your brain develops from the back to the front. It's the very last thing that's developed, which is why teenagers can seem like sociopaths, because they really don't have frontal lobes connected. So when people are having these conversations with children, trying to explain everything, and their kids are kind of nodding, they don't really understand. It's really not real. What they do get is an emotion. So I would say, if you scream at your kid, if you lose your shit for a minute, I hope you repair that. I hope you go back like, that wasn't okay, and try not to ever do that again. But that's different to me. That's like in the moment. But oh, I'm so sorry that we can't go to Chuck E. Cheese. Like, no. We don't apologize for being a parent. You know what I mean? We can apologize sometimes if we do things that are unhealthy, really unhealthy, and over our boundaries. But that's it. And so I think that's the thing. But kids can seem very mature, right? When they're on their iPhones and their iPads and they're, getting all this information, and they can talk really together. And coffee, don't even get me started. Like, I don't drink coffee, but 9-year-olds walking around with coffee or whatever, 12-year-olds.
Yeah, I was at church. I've noticed that. I was at church on Sunday, and we have a little coffee bar at church. And there's this kid that's like 7 years old, and she's like got her little creamer and her coffee. And I'm like, seriously, where are your parents?
It's seriously not good, right? Because it's a stimulant. They shouldn't be having that in their body at that age. But I mean, we never even thought in my day of drinking coffee. Just the whole way. So they seem very they're kind of sophisticated. Kids are a little bit they know things that we don't know, so because of their access to technology that their parents don't necessarily have, and so, but that gets confused with maturity, and that's the problem. Your brains aren't mature till later. So you really want to have age appropriate conversations with kids. And the problem becomes when kids believe they have more power than they do. And that's when you get entitlement. And by the way, tantrums, frustration, all that stuff, kind of the more negative things we see from kids are because they feel elevated. They feel like there's three parents, not the kid and the parents up here. And that becomes a huge problem, like huge. There's a lot of, we call it structural family therapy. There's a whole type of family therapy where we focus on writing the hierarchy and making sure that kids are kids and parents are parents. That's where kids feel safest. They really do. They need the boundaries. They need the clarity. We were like crazy people with bedtime and naps and, like all that. Like, we really made sure they got plenty of sleep, and we missed a lot of events for years because I just wasn't going to have my kid out at 11 o'clock at night. Just wasn't going to happen.
Right.
They had bedtime. And you know what? My kids didn't have tantrums. They just didn't. They were very even keeled, and people, I get it. Some of it might be genetics and our fabulous parenting, but a lot of it, I'm convinced from everything I've seen in the research, is that they were getting adequate sleep. And there was a schedule that they could adhere. Again, the schedules feel really good to kids. Overscheduling does not.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode. I hope you're enjoying it and learning a lot. If you're looking for extra help, don't forget that I do offer one-on-one coaching. We can talk through a ton of different issues. I can give you guides, guidelines, and logistical help to help you take that next step or go to that next level in some of the things that you're dealing with in your life. We also have some course content, some guides, and a lot of educational materials over at maxedoutman.com. For the coaching, go ahead and go to maxedoutman.com/coaching. And you can learn about that. And then just go to maxedoutman.com for everything else. Thanks for joining us. Now back to the episode.
We have, the Monitoring the Future study that comes out every year shows that that's the number one complaint kids have around their parents is feeling overscheduled. And so that's why we didn't have 5 sports and an instrument and 2 foreign languages and a thing. So that's why my kids aren't at Harvard. And I'm okay with that. They'll find their way in the world and it'll all be fine, but, but if you're not, I don't knock that. It's fine. Just know that that's really hard for your children to absorb all that scheduling. Again, they're not adults. They're not little tiny people who are adults in small bodies. They're children. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, because I mean we're in a situation now in our country, especially, and I think this is more of a Western culture thing where we're allowing kids to make, and we don't need to go down this road too far, but life-altering decisions, right, based on kind of an emotional decision or feelings or identities and all of those kind of things, and it's really scary to me to see kind of that stuff because, like, dude, one day my kid decided she was a giraffe. Right. Like that's, it's so like, all of, those emotional decisions, whether it's some sort of major thing or small things or whatever, I always looked at it and forgive the comparison to dogs. But in the dog world, one of the big things that they talk about is this hierarchy, right? Like I need to be the alpha for my dog, not only for my own sanity and my own, kind of ability to control the house and the dogs and all that. But it actually is better for the dog because the dogs that think that, right, if they think they're the alpha, they have this major stress that kind of puts them in. And I think, again, forgive the comparison, but I think kids are in that way too if they're in an unnatural position of authority that is not normal for, this relationship, not normal for their development, I think it's worse for them and worse for everybody else around them, quite frankly.
Very true. I know. Yeah. I remember having there was a friend I had growing up whose parents would let us do drugs in the house and they did drugs with us. And, one of those kind of houses. Yeah. It was pretty crazy. And I can remember going home, it seemed really cool and great to have such cool parents, and we had parties there and it was amazing. And there was drugs everywhere, and being a drug addict, I loved it, of course. But I do remember going home and being very relieved. Do you know what I mean? It's scary to be on that edge all the time, where anything goes. You're like,
Yeah.
So it's good. Again, boundaries, clarity are really how all of us thrive.
Yeah. And I like that you said that it's not too late. So if you're a dad or mom listening to this and you're kind of seeing all your friends are doing the, in our parenting day, it was more Love and Logic, I think was the book. And now I don't know what the new thing is called, but it's Love and Logic kind of thing taken times, to the 10th power. Kind of a deal.
I would say if you have one parenting book you want to get, and it's not necessarily known as this, but a woman named Carol Dweck, Dweck, famous researcher. Malcolm Gladwell quotes her all the time, loves her. She wrote this about fixed and growth mindset. And there's a book called Mindset, and it's for coaches, parents, teacher, whatever, anybody who works with kids. Go get that book. Go get that book. If you just only do that, you will have healthy together kids. You really will. And you'll be able to turn the tide on what might have been there with this growth and fixed mindset, which is also getting applied in work environments and everywhere. It's very well studied. It's brilliant. She's brilliant. I have a girl crush on her. And, I love when research is applied and works. And we've got decades now of this working. So Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Mindset by Carol Dweck. That's awesome. And don't be afraid to be different in your parenting groups too. Young moms especially. So if you're a man listening to this as a dad, feel free to encourage your wife and your mom, the mom in your life that it's okay for you to not do what everybody else is doing. Because if you do what everybody else is doing, you're going to get the same result as everybody else, which may not be the result that you're looking for.
Yes.
We've talked a little bit about, so that's parenting. That's the
whole parenting thing. Yeah, there you go.
No, I think honestly, these conversations go where they need to go. And I think that's a great advice because I think there's so many men that, I used to apologize to my kids all the time. because, and I would say to my oldest, I'm like, you're the first, you've never been this age before. And I've never been a dad of a kid this age
5-year-old, 7-year-old, 10-year-old.
Right. Like and I would say so many times, I'm kind of making this crap up as I go along also. So let's do this. So I'm going to make mistakes, and, we're going to kind of work through this, and I'm going to grow in this the same way you're growing in this. But I want to get into your book a little bit. The first one, we can also talk about boundaries. Maybe we can start there. Boundaries are interesting. We're going through something, or we have been going through something with a young couple that we've been mentoring, and very in a way that was really weird. We transferred from this mentoring type relationship, this coaching relationship, into these pseudo grandparent relationship very quickly, and it happened without us even noticing.
Wow.
And so we had to do this full reverse, full stop.
Yeah.
And honestly, it appears that it's actually going to end that relationship, which is kind of sad, because we were very loving about it, and we said, hey, this is in not so many words, this is not what we signed up for. This is not what we're put in your life to do. So and I think men probably go, and maybe this is a completely blanket incorrect statement, I think men tend to be more too many boundaries than too few. That's in my own life.
Well,
if Michelle comes and said, hey, Jane wants me to do this, this, and this, so I agreed to do that, I will say, what's the rest of your week look like? Didn't you just tell me that you were doing 7 things that week and, are ready? And so I have to encourage her to set, boundaries in that way.
Well, let's just even start there. So here's what I tell men, first of all, you guys, I love you guys so much. I love men, but you fix a lot. And what happens with that? So I always say, don't sack your relationships. SAC. See, I use little football stuff. Don't offer suggestions.
There's not a soccer. It's not a soccer.
I hate soccer. Don't get me started. Don't get me started. Don't offer suggestions, give advice, or criticize. SAC.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, you really want to focus on asking questions. So that is just number one in general in life. It's probably my number one communication tip I could give you. Closeness tip. We don't want to it's very easy to get in a situation where men feel like the dad or the child, right, to the wife. So sometimes men are not doing what they need to do. And you hear women go, oh, I've got 3 kids. I've got, Jimmy and Johnny over there. And then my husband. Right. And I hate hearing that, because first of all, you don't want to have sex with your kid, and you don't want to have sex with your dad. Do you know what I mean? And then I have men complaining that their wives don't want to have sex. And I'm like, well, you're acting like her father. I think it would be gross if she wanted to have sex with you. So, you've got to take yourself out of honey, you have all these things to do. I say with love. I know you didn't mean it that way, but there's a way of instead stopping and wow, that sounds like a lot, okay. Does that feel good to you? When you step back and think about the week, tell me more about how, do I need to help? How's that going to be? Do you know what I mean? You can do that so that people have their own coming to oh yeah, I've got this on Monday and that on Tuesday, and this thing is on Thursday. I don't even know when I'm going to do this cooking. I too do too much, and that person, and Gary, my Gary will sort of be like, huh, because I've trained him, to sort of ask the questions instead of just saying that's crazy, or get mad at me. He used to get mad. And I think a lot of men do. They're like, you've got all this stuff because we get stressed, right, when we have too much on our plates, and the men know they're getting the fallout of that. So then, ergo, they're mad when we overgive, right? Except unless it's to them, then they're okay. But if we overgive outside, then it's not. So here's what I talk about boundaries. Boundaries are on a continuum, with thin on one side and thick on the other. And men tend to get more thick with their boundaries, and really where it gets to kind of walls, I said it and this is it, and I just can't say it anymore, or whatever, or, I don't want to talk about it.
We already talked about this 3 times.
Yep. It's great. And here's what I say. do you want to be correct or effective?
Mm-hmm.
So you could be right all day long that you've already talked about this 3 times and, she's still doing the thing, but it's not effective. If you have to say something more than once to your kids, to your partner, to whoever, you are not being very effective. And if you did that at work, by the way, you get fired. If you just kept doing, just keep doing the same thing and the same results. Oh, well. But for some reason with our partners, we do it a lot. So that's number one right there, is to think, use that filter. Like, wow, I'm not being effective. Like right this minute, we're having this conversation for the 4th time, that, instead of making you mad and frustrated, I wanted to make you curious. Like, oh, what? Okay, let's break this down.
Yeah.
What do I have to do different? So that's just like on top. But so when the boundaries get really thick and we kind of slam the door on people and we get angry and it's a hard no. And I don't like any of that stuff. And instead I want an enlightened no, not a hard no, which is Gay Hendricks talks about it in The Big Leap, another amazing book. But anyway, where you're just coming from a no of alignment, like, we've been here a lot. We've been in this place a lot. So I need to say no from there, not from like pushing back, but more of just this, steady, strong, and depending on the kind of relationship you're in, in my relationship, Gary is kind of he is that rock, and
Michelle tells me I serve that.
I think that happens a lot. Now, it doesn't mean I don't want to see emotion and I don't want to hear from him. And I think men confuse that. They think, well, I'm the rock, so I can't show anything and I can't say what I want or what I feel. That is not what we're saying at all. We're asking for steadiness. And it's still steady if you say, God, that really hurt my feelings, or I'm having a hard time. The steadiness is more in the commitment, in the connection. That's what we're looking for, a steady connection. So when she says, I need you to be my rock, she's not saying, I get to cry every minute and you just have to be steadfast and whatever. I don't even know what that is. But she's saying, I need your steady commitment to me. I need to know that it's a we thing. That if I have a problem, it means we have a problem. Just like if you have a problem, it means we have a problem. But so often, right, people kind of separate that out. I see it a lot when people first get together, sometimes with like debt. One person has debt and the other person doesn't. And, one's a spender, one's a saver. People label all this stuff and it's like, well, that's on you. It's like, you're going to share a life with this person. You're going to buy a house. You're going to have children. You're going to do all this stuff. But you don't want to share debt. Like, what does it even mean?
Yeah. Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode. I hope you're enjoying it and learning a lot. If you're looking for extra help, don't forget that I do offer one-on-one coaching. We can talk through a ton of different issues. I can give you guides, guidelines, and logistical help to help you take that next step or go to that next level in some of the things that you're dealing with in your life. We also have some course content, some guides, and a lot of educational materials over at maxedoutman.com. For the coaching, go ahead and go to maxedoutman.com/coaching, and you can learn about that. And then just go to maxedoutman.com for everything else. Thanks for joining us. Now back to the episode.
Like, what are you even doing? You're already separating yourself.
And they have separate bank accounts and separate, I put my check in here and I put your check in here and I pay for these things.
That, as long as you sit together and go, here's our money.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I have separate bank accounts, but we know what's in each other's together. There's no.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's kind of
transparent,
separate but together kind of thing, right? So
there isn't like one right way to do that, but you're right. There has to be transparency, and there can't be one person living one lifestyle and another person living another lifestyle. Those are the things. So the boundaries. What I say, and then on the other side, by the way, so there's thick, too thick, kind of disconnected, gets very short, gets very sort of angry, I think. And then on the other side are boundaries that are too thin and what we would call enmeshed, where people have no boundaries, high codependency, they're a little anxious, like I need to know everything all the time, and I'm in everybody's business, I'm trying to help the world all the time. And not having much self-care, right? There's almost like too much self-care on the other side, on the thick side. You know what I mean? Like self-preservation, I should say, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
And so what we want is to have boundaries. And here's the key is that your boundaries should never change depending on how other people act. And that is people's biggest problem. So I say that my boundary is that I need to leave the house at 5 to go to dinner, to go to this meeting. We're going to a business dinner and you're coming with me, right? That we're all going. This just happened. So that's why I'm bringing it up with one of my couples. And I know one of my favorite couples, he's literally German and she is Brazilian. So you can already see where there's I know. I always joke with them. I think that's illegal.
You talk about continuums. That's the international definition of continuum, personality
right?
continuum.
Like from Germany, from Brazil, like not even like watered down versions, you know? And she, you know, and this has been a huge issue, right? And I say, like, you can't change if your boundary is, I said to the husband, if your boundary is that you need to leave at 5 to feel comfortable to get to these things, because it's like an hour drive, you know, you don't want to worry about traffic. You want to get there early and be composed and, you know, kind of have yourself together, then that's your boundary and you leave at 5, but you don't have to yell at her. You don't have to be mad and you don't have to do, he used to do the victim martyr thing. And wait and then be pissed all night at her and they would always get there on time, by the way, but not the way he wanted. So,
well, there's that whole phrase, right? Like if we're early, you know, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, something, and then if we're late, it's unacceptable. That kind of thing. Like there's this, and I can't remember the middle part. I need to look that up. But like it's this whole thing. Like being on time is if you're on time, you're late, and if you're late, that's unacceptable. That's those are the three. So anyway, that's
what it is for him, right? For her, it's not. And I want to be clear, there's no right and wrong here. And that's the other problem. It's a preference. His preference is to be there early, definitely cultural, but his preference is to be earlier and have lots of time and relaxation. Her preference is not. She'll make it. And she has other things she'd like to do with that time. And she, you know, wants to fill her day differently. But, you know, we get into this right and wrong with our partners. I'm right, you're wrong. And that's a big mistake. But beyond that, you know, the obvious answer was just leave. Like leave it, not with a huff, not with slamming the door, not with a thick boundary, not with, I'm so mad at you now, not with a martyr thing, and not with anything. Just like, I love you so much, babe. And I'm going to go, like I said, and then you just go. And sure enough, this couple started doing it and she got there. It was fine. She, you know what I mean? She came in later, all beautiful and glammed up and, you know, and
she gets to make the full entrance into the dinner, right? Yeah.
That entrance she makes with all her joie de vivre and all her beautifulness. And, you know, it's like, I have couples too, where one person in the couple wants to have sex more than another person. That's pretty common. And it's often common that men want to have sex more than women. And again, it's a preference. It's not right to have more sex and wrong to have less. It's just a preference that people have at different times.
And biological in a lot of cases, you know, right? So
no, women want to have sex as much as men.
I mean, in terms of like, there could be hormonal things going on and that kind of thing.
I think most of the time it's the disconnection in the relationship. I really do. But yes, as women get older, right, we have less testosterone quicker than men. I mean, there's definitely things and babies, you know, there's stuff. But in general, you know, there gets to be that kind of contentiousness. And I always say to the men in my practice, I'm like, first of all, have a conversation with your wife where you ask questions, but from a curious place. And my favorite question for that one is, what would you like to see more of in our sex life? It is a great question to ask. It's so open and curious. And of course, you know, your partner might go like, what? You know, and what do you mean? And it's like, but you have to truly be curious. And this is the other thing that you really want to take to the bank. You have to connect to correct. And another big mistake people make is they're trying to correct someone else's behavior from an angry, disconnected place. It's not going to happen. I'm not motivated to have more sex with you. I'm not motivated. You're being a jerk to me, like as far as I'm concerned. So I'm not motivated at all. I don't even want to have this conversation with you. Do you see you know, but what happens when we're really getting along with our partners, when we're in the zone a little bit, it's going well. We're like, oh, I don't want to bring that up now. You know, we're doing great. Like, I don't want to rock the boat now. But that is the only the only time you should bring it up. So when you're having fun, maybe you're on the couch laughing about something, or you're rubbing her feet, or I don't know, or she's rubbing yours, and you're just hanging out, or you're laughing at a show or something, or you're sharing things. That is the time to go, hey, can I ask you something? I'm really curious. What would you like to see? I'm wondering, what would you like to see more of in our sex life? That is going to have a rich conversation if you're truly curious and not trying to drive her towards a goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she gives an answer, ask more, what I call them collaborative, open-ended questions. You might say, well, tell me, because she might say, well, I'd like to have more romance. And you might say, well, tell me more. What is romance to you? Like, what is that? What am I doing? What am I saying when in the past, like, what have I done or said when you feel like that's romantic? Because I'm telling you, men think it's like, oh, I got to take her out to dinner and then we can have sex. It's like, nope, that is not what women mean at all. So at all by that. So probably if you cleaned off your jelly off the counter after you made a sandwich would probably feel like romance to her. But I'm saying, so that's why you want to have you really do want to know. And men are the best with hitting a target. When men have a target, you guys are the bomb. You don't think much about it. Like women are like, well, he said it's a target, but is it the target? I'm not sure. Like, forget it. We suck.
Yeah.
Men, or I shouldn't say we suck. We're not as good. Men, you guys are the best. So this is why it's so great to ask these questions and to be very specific. Like, tell me more. And again, curious. Like, if you don't have a curious intent, she will feel interrogated. Mm-hmm. And if that is what she's telling you, I feel like you're interrogating me. You're not being curious. You're just not. I don't care if you think, listen like you're wrong. Always listen like you're wrong. And so I'm telling you, if that's what she says, don't get defensive. Don't say, well, I was. Nope. That's not her experience with you.
Yeah.
So again, you could ask a question. I feel like I'm being really curious and open. I get that I'm apparently sucking at this. What am I doing? Like, I feel like I'm missing something and I want to get it. I really want to get it. Do you see?
Yeah.
Telling you, women will be leaning in so deep on that, like, just like, what? And vice versa, men too. Like, I want to get this. And this is the team aspect. Mm-hmm. This is this idea that we have shared things. It's not like your problem with me. It's our issue. It's our stumbling block that we need to find a solution for because we love each other and want to stay together. That is our only option. Right? So what are we doing? Doing anything else, right? Like let's find what that solution is together. And I always talk about you don't want to negotiate. Get rid of compromise and negotiation. Get rid of them. Get rid of the concept. Get rid of the ideas. I know men love to negotiate, but when you are on a line like that, right? Your partner's over here, you're over here, and you're negotiating along this line. What we know from the research is that when people compromise, both sides think they gave up more than the other. How do you like that?
Yeah.
So now I have two unhappy people. Two, not just one. If you went with one person's idea, at least one person would be happy, right?
Right.
I have two unhappy people who are building resentment, which is one of the death knells of a relationship. So instead, I want you to think of decision-making as a triangle with your partner. So you're down here, we're each at like a base of the triangle and we're sort of looking up. If you're spiritual, you could see that as God, like a godlike intervention, right? If you're not, I don't care. It's this solution that and this is good at work too, get out of this struggle, this tug of war, and instead look up, like, what have we not thought of? Like, and brainstorm, go crazy. What have we not thought of that could be an option here? And you can have both of your present solutions in there. But if you think there's only two choices to something, you're not even looking at there's a million choices, always. So open your brains and brainstorm the silliest things. I don't care. Like, I had a couple arguing about private school or public school for their kid. And it seems like there's only two choices there, right? Go to public or go to private. But there's not. And I had them brainstorm all the things we could start our own charter school. We could have school on a boat. We could homeschool. We could have our parents do it. We could go to Catholic school. There are a million options within that. And once I started really brainstorming, and then when they started asking like, well, why not homeschool, let's say, right? So it's, well, I want them to have more social. Oh, okay. Well, where does that fit? And then you start talking about what's important. What is it that you're looking for? It's not about private school or public school. It's about, what do you think is important for your kids? And let's make a list together of that we can agree on, which is pretty easy, believe it or not. Usually that's right there. Yeah. Then we can say, which option do we think is best to achieve this? And that's what naturally happens when you do it this way. Instead of this, I'm on this side, you're over there. And by the way, I want to win. Mm-hmm. And I want you to lose. And that's that's one of my main parts of my TED Talk, and something I speak a lot about in the book is this idea, the number one problem in relationships isn't communication, it's competition. It's this competing that we do for resources, for time. Well, I took Johnny to baseball on Monday, so it's your turn to take Sophie to piano on Wednesday. You went out with your friends on Friday, so I'm going to go out with my friends on Saturday. Do you know all this tit for tat crap? It's your turn to put away the dishes. Oh my God, I have you did this, so I have to do that. I mean, it's so bad because we bring different things to a relationship. And when you start doing that count off, that tit for tat, that hour to hour thing, that's stuff we do in our jobs. Now my relationship is a job, is a competition. It's competition. As soon as you start keeping score, we keep scores in games. Like, that's to compete. That's the only place we do it. So you have to get rid of that. You have to get rid of this idea that you're looking at what they're doing and it's never as much as what you're doing and they don't appreciate me. You can see the place this goes. So anyway, and I'll stop. I've been chatting, so I'll stop talking.
No, you're good.
It makes me a little crazy. You can see I'm bossy Jewish mother. Here I go.
Well, like in our relationship, one of the things that we've talked a lot about is like, if I'm doing, if I'm concentrating on making sure her needs are met, and she's kind of concentrating on that my needs are met, then we're externally focused on each other versus being, I want to make sure my needs are met first. And, there's this whole continuum with that, of course, but that to me feels like one of the ways that we've been successful because, you're making sure the other one's met. And, from a sexuality standpoint, it's interesting because we've had those conversations and my wife is 50, she's premenopausal, but her hormones are kind of all out of whack. And so we've taken this like work with what we've got kind of philosophy. So I always joke and say for about 6 days of the month, I am 42 to 48% more attractive to my wife, which is during ovulation week, right? Like I did this video the other day talking about knowing your wife's cycles, and obviously every woman's different and all that, but like, there are other times a week where her testosterone levels are very low or she's stressed or whatever. It's like, there's no chance that this is happening. So like we may have sex 5 days in 1 week and then go 2.5 weeks with no sex. It's just, it is what it is, but we are open and honest about that communication. And we also will say, look, dude, it's been like 3 weeks. I'm really like, can we figure out how to make this work, tonight?
I call that maintenance sex, like
there you go. Sacrificial sex.
It's like maintenance, like getting your car in for an oil change or something. Like we just have to, like at this point, like we have to figure that out. And, I would also say I love that. And it's so important to have the open conversations that aren't blaming. And to, again, figure it out together. It's not her problem that right? It's our thing. And there are spaces where, sometimes women can get testosterone and not to have more, I don't know, but to have more energy, to feel better, to
be optimized, like we call it hormonally optimized, right? Like that's
right? I mean, there's ways to do that for men too, because I sometimes have men who are on antidepressants or, whose own testosterone has gone down or depressed, untreated depression, you don't want to have sex. So there's a lot of different ways that either person can, and what I always say is make sure, number one, that your physical connection is still strong. Sex is the one thing we have with our partners that we don't have with anybody else. Like I have a best friend I call my wife. I always say, it's good to have a wife and a husband. Everybody should have one. Where I share a lot of things I don't share with Gary, like she's my she's like my other soulmate. You know, she's like my, that person for me. Yeah. And, there's a way that, when you get your needs fulfilled in multiple ways, it's very helpful. So I don't look to him to be everything. You know what I mean? My best friend and my this and my that. I feel like men get set up a lot by women. And I talk to women a lot about this, to be like everything. And that's not really good. And men do it sometimes with women, they, it's really good to have these more rounded sort of, I just want to say that too. But, I have my wife, but, we don't touch in the way Gary and I do. Right. You know what I mean? That's different. And so this way, to think about touch in a different level. And for women, we definitely get nervous when men are touching us sometimes, if it always leads to sex, because, and now we don't want you to touch us at all. And this happens a lot because we feel like, oh, you're just going to want sex. Like, and it feels so premeditated, or calculating, or it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel
manipulative for sure. Yeah.
It doesn't feel spontaneous and yummy and warm and the things that we really want. So keep that in mind, that you should have a lot of non-sexual touching that can feel, though, very intimate and yummy and warm. And that, that needs to be part of the equation. And we know that the more you touch, the more oxytocin is released. And guess what? The more sex you want. Right. So it's a win-win. I don't know what else to say, but it's, it's a bonding hormone. It's so great for everything. And it's really this very special way to be. But I also talk to men about, Gary and I were away a few weeks ago, and he had gone down to the restaurant before me and the hotel before me, because I was finishing getting ready. And, and he was meeting friends, it was fine. Like, I was like, go, let me get ready. I don't, and I came in and he was standing in a way that he could see the door. Like, he wanted to see when I came in. He wanted to make sure I got there and I got there safe.
Watching for you. Yeah.
He was watching for me. And when I came in, it was so great. His little face lit up, and he said, excuse me. And he came and got, he walked over to me, just all you look gorgeous, and just was watching me. And I have to, after all these years together, I have to tell you, that's good stuff. Like if any woman is going to want to have sex with you, it's, and we were certainly not having sex here in the restaurant. Okay. We don't do that. So it just is this attention. It was physical attention, even though he hadn't touched me. I don't know how else to describe that. So
it's that presence. I talk about it in terms of cherishing your wife, and there's a chivalry component that I think is a little bit looked down upon now in some circles, and it's not a disrespectful thing. Like in that, like I tell Michelle all the time, I'm like, my heart literally in that case, like I can envision myself standing there and looking over and having my heart just like skip a beat. Because it still does that. We've been together 30 years.
That's great.
And it gets better every day. But I would be the same way. And I love that story, because I think so many men would just be like, oh, she's an independent woman. Right. She's strong. And so I'm just going to stand here and talk to my friends. No, don't be a dickhead. Go over there and get, meet your wife at the door. It takes 35 seconds. And there's no ulterior motive here. It's like I open the car door for Michelle every time. Like that's it, unless there's a physical reason I can't do it. That's a sign of respect for her. And so that I love that kind of that
and
vision.
You want to ask, right? What kinds of things? And because I let him know, he also knows, like if he gives me my card for my birthday, he takes a lot of time picking out the card, because he knows I'm a words of affirmation gal. Like I really, my love language, and I like him to write in the card. Like that's all I need, frankly. I don't care. If you just get me that, I'm really a happy gal. And my kids know it too. People know it. I tell them what I want and need.
Right.
And ask that this is the thing they focus on. And I remind them, I'll say it again, just because I don't want to set them up and I don't want to be set up for disappointment. And so these are things, we know to do. And again, it's a point of connection, right? I call these micro connections, these kind of things. And if you focused on that, my favorite micro connection every day, and if everybody did this, it would change your relationship, there's two. One is that Gary and I always greet each other at the door. So no matter what you're doing, if you're the one home, You stop doing it again for 30 friggin' seconds. We don't, and we sort of joke sometimes that we want to be like golden retrievers at the door, like jumping up. And he's 6'4". He's this huge man. So it's very funny when he does it. But just to bring that energy, like, wow, I haven't seen you all day and I'm really excited to see you. And let's just connect again. Here's the micro connection that could lead to sex later. You know what I mean? That is just in and of itself, like, you're special. I'm taking a minute. I feel close to you. I want you to know that I really missed you today. And yes, I was cooking dinner. I just every now and then, my hands are already in.
Right. Yeah.
I just can't. But that's rare. Most of the time, I can get up and go to the door, and it takes. I don't. Sometimes we make out at the door. It's kind of fun, but not always.
Right.
We like each other. We say hi, and then we go to our lot. He goes and puts his bag down, and I go back to dinner, and then we reconnect. Like, it doesn't take much, but it takes this intention. And that's the other thing I would love everyone to do. Anybody who's listening, I want to set intention often. So I sit in my car before I come in my home. And just, it takes 18 seconds, by the way. I've timed it because that's how crazy this Jewish mother is. That is how insane I am. So I took like a time study of like 30 times of doing it, and I made the average, and it was 18 seconds. So here you go. So if you don't have 18 seconds, I can't help you. I don't even know what to say anymore, but right? Like,
you're on your own.
You're on your own. You're on your own. I love you, but go away. So I set intention. I do it all day long. I call that kind of intention chunking. Anytime I task switch, I set intention. And what I'm doing is just taking, again, 18, I close my eyes for a minute. I usually do one breath. Nothing's crazy. I don't ohm. It's nothing nuts, just a nice, deep, slow exhalation, deep breath in, slow exhalation. And then I just set intention. How do I want to be when I walk in my house, right? Because I'm a control freak. So I used to walk in my house like, hey, what's going on? Has anybody walked the dog? Is the dog poop picked up? What's for dinner? What, go get your homework done. Did you, right? People don't like this. It's not nice. Everyone's doing their thing, and I'm like a hurricane, like coming in, like, and it's not who I want to be anyway. And it's distracted energy. It's like, I'm coming home to my family, my children. What if this is the last time I'll ever see them? Like, what? Oh my gosh. So, so I set intention in the car. My intention is to be playful when I walk in. My intention is to be patient. That's a biggie for me.
Yeah. To
slow my roll.
So you literally, as you're walking, you're saying the word patient. I listened to your podcast, right?
So what I'm doing, I'm like, be patient, be fun, be whatever. And when I walk in the door, I have that energy when I walk in, because people pick up on this. I quote a lot this research from Timothy Wilson, famous researcher, who his research showed that our conscious brains, this is crazy, process information at a rate of 40 bits per second, while our unconscious brains process information at a rate of 11 million bits per second.
Wow.
So people don't hear what you say, they hear what you mean. So if I walk in the door with this very distracted, angry, weird energy, right, where I just want to get everybody to do stuff, that I don't care how nice I am, how like, hey, good to see everybody, right? How it is going to seem fake, and no one's going to buy it because everyone's been here where you're talking to someone and you're like, this person is full of crap, right? They're saying all the right things, but
that BS detector is going off. Yeah.
You are not picking up what they're laying down. You're like, no, this is not. That's your 11 million bits. So setting intention aligns that for your conscious thought with what's happening subconsciously. And that's what people are picking up on. So when you get that in check, before I did the podcast today, I sat here I stood here in my office. I like to stand up. I actually do some jumping jacks. I get my energy up, and I thought, what do I want, today? Oh, I'm really going to connect. I want to connect with you. I want to have this really fun, exciting conversation. Where will it go? We don't know. I want to be of service. Like I want everyone who's listening including you, to walk away thinking there's at least one thing I can do today to help change my life. Like, and hopefully people got it today. I don't know if they did. I hope so.
I've got like 4 or 5 of them. So I think.
Okay. So, but that's do you know what I mean? And then after you and I end today, and before I see my next client, I will do it again. I will stand up, from my desk. Sometimes I walk outside, I take that 18 seconds and sometimes longer, just to shift from this task to the next. When I get home at night, I do that setting intention. For me, when I get home, I walk, everybody knows to leave me alone. I go in the bathroom, I change clothes out of my kind of dress clothes because I'm going to cook dinner. Cool. And I change and I wash my face. I spend time taking off my makeup and doing all the fabulous things to my skin that older women have to do. And I just have this time of sort of shifting from being a working person out in the world doing what I do to just wanting to really be with my family and my children and my hubby, just wanting the animals, whatever you got, wanting to just truly be there 100%. I write a weekly love letter to my email list. If anybody wants to sign up, it's on the website. It says love letter. I'm not selling it. I don't sell anything. It's just a weekly inspirational letter. And I just spoke about, it's Rosh Hashanah. It's one of the highest holidays of the Jewish year. And people always think it means atonement and repentance, this day of repentance. And Yom means day in Hebrew, and Kippur actually is from another Hebrew word, atonement. It really means to return. It means to return. And really, as I grew up, Yom Kippur was a day to return to self, to return as I was raised, so that we all have a godly soul. That's how I was, to return to what I know is right, to my higher self, to my higher self. And that's what you're supposed to spend time doing. And yes, I might have had the year maybe I did some things I'm not proud of. Maybe I acted in ways I didn't like, but I'm not sitting there beating up myself about that. Instead, I'm acknowledging it. And I'm like, okay, and how do I return to self so I can raise that bar for myself again? And I think of that for me, I've just wrote about it in the love letter, but I think about it, that word for me all the time when I'm washing my face. I think about returning to self, to higher ground. That's what I do that's like setting intention, but in a kind of longer way. That's what I do. I don't mindlessly wash my, and think about work. And I don't. I really use the time to truly shift my energy into how I want to be now in the house. And I would encourage everyone to do that in some way. I have a man I'm working with right now, and I have him, they have little twins at home, and it's just, young, it's crazy at house. Right. And he's like a tech startup guy and, a founder, and it's a crazy life. And so I have him now sitting in his garage when he comes home. And he goes in there, he gets home because the kids, that's a different entrance. They don't know that he's there. And he comes into the garage, and I said to him, set a timer for 15 minutes and just hang out. Don't think about work. I don't care what you do. Read a book, put your feet up, have a beer. I don't care what it is for you that feels good. Oh, he actually likes these ginger sodas. Anyway, he has these ginger sodas. He has a ginger soda, and he just sits there just sort of decompressing, shifting his energy, getting ready, returning to self, just returning. How do I want to be now when I walk in my house? How do I want to be when I walk in? If anyone listening is feeling like when they get home that they feel like they have to get ready for battle, it's all going to start when I get home, and it's going to be dishes and dinners and I got to clean, and the kids and my wife or husband it's like that energy, that 11 million bits is going to pick up on that energy. It's not a battle to be at your house. It doesn't have to be. So how do you shift that? You have to do it. And it just takes seconds. I promise, I guarantee, I swear. It just takes seconds. And I would say of all the things I've ever told my clients, this is probably the biggest game changer for them, is this setting intention.
I love it. Yeah. Intentionality is so super important. I talk, my wife does a lot of baking. So she spends my office is just off of, so I have my own home office. I've been in here for 25. So my office is not that far from the kitchen. So if I need to go upstairs, I walk through the kitchen. And so I could just walk through. I have two paths, one side of the island versus where she is versus the other side of the island, which is actually the more efficient way to do it. I am intentional to try to go on her side, and I usually stop, put my hands on her hips behind her, and kiss the back of her neck. Like that's just what I do. And so that becomes that connection. And obviously, as somebody that's a physical touch guy, talking about Gary Chapman's love languages, that connection actually is more for me than it is for her.
Yeah.
In that case, but it keeps that connection going and that intentionality. And I love the whole thing, because it's funny, because I have another podcast that's more of a business podcast. I do it as a consultant for another company, but I do a set change, right? Like I'm wearing this is my Maxed Out Man shirt. I've got my Maxed Out Man posters on the back. I have another set of 4 posters. So I switch those out. Yep. I will change my shirt. I do the set and wardrobe change, right? Like that's if you're watching a play, they would do the same thing. Yeah. Yep. Scene, right? Scene.
That's what it is. Scene.
Saturday Night Live here.
And don't you feel different? You feel different.
Yeah, because I'm putting on like it's a different hat, and almost with what you're talking about, when you get home, you're doing a wardrobe set change mentally and physically, because you're changing your clothing, and that changes the mindset. I love that. I think I want to be respectful of your time. I know you've got other things to do. This has been a great conversation. I love these conversations. First of all, I just want to say, if you have trouble listening, start a podcast where you interview other people, because it will definitely make you a better listener. My wife, Michelle, has said so many times, she's like, you are such a better listener now that you've done, almost 100 episodes of these podcasts. And I'm like, great. That's what I'm trying to be. But, being able to sit and have these conversations with people that I would probably never have conversations with, and to be able to learn and explore some of these things and be, anyway, I'm super appreciative of you taking the time today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Tell us how we find you. We want to get your love letter newsletter. I know you've got you've got tons of content out there, TEDx, everything. So lay that out for us.
Everything is really on the website. Abby Medcalf, just spelled correctly with the D, ABBY MEDCALF. I'm sure you'll have.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes for sure.
AbbyMedcalf.com. Everything is there. The podcast, if you don't like to listen to podcasts, which you must like to if you're listening now, but there's a relationship tips and tools page where I write a corresponding blog for every single post. So if people like to read instead, but there's a free meditation starter kit and a free mindfulness starter kit and all the things that you need really that are free, that are truly free. It's my give. I'm trying to create world peace, one relationship at a time. And so you can spend money on my book and you can spend money on things, but you don't have to. And that has been my mission since I started 5 years ago. We're in our 6th season, and now it's just blown up so big. It's crazy to me that this thing I feel so deeply about is reach so many people. And if you like, what I'm talking about here, you'll love the podcast because it's very actionable and clear. And I cover every topic in the world. And then my Instagram, all my handles, everything is there. And YouTube and all that is all on the website, and you can link and find all the things. And obviously the podcast is everywhere, Spotify and Apple and all the places. And then you'll know when the next book comes out, if you're in the love letter. Again, it just comes out every Wednesday, and it's just meant to inspire. That's it. There's little stories. People love the love letter is a pretty big deal. People really love it, and it really is from my heart, and meant to make your week better.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I'm going to go out and sign up today. So I'll make sure I listen to that. But hey, Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and hopefully we'll be able to have you back and talk about the new book when it's out and all that too. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
If you're looking to really maximize your life and become the man you were made to be, head over to maxedoutman.com and get your journey started today.